Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. Once again, it's a Tuesday, so I'm joined by Natasha Meikle and Lawrence Conley for another instalment of the ACSOM Bulletin. Loads to discuss, Natasha, and we'll just get stuck right into it. It looks as though we have reinforcements coming in. So looking at the transfer speculation, I was reading through the last few days, sources looking at all the different players, and there are many being linked with Celtic. And we've heard stories of various right-backs, centre-backs, and the one who may be joining us from Royal Antwerp is Aurélio Buta. Great news, but a wee bit late for tomorrow night's game, isn't it? But it's good that we are strengthening in the right back position. Have you had a chance to check him out, Natasha?
Watching the usual YouTube highlights reel, the various things that are posted online, absolutely, yes. As you've said, of course it's a bit too late. All of our transfer activity just seems to happen a bit too late, not just this year, but every year. So putting, the timing of this to one side, then yes, it's absolutely excellent that we are now finally addressing the right back spot. I don't think any of us quite believed that we would really go into Champions League qualifiers with Anthony Ralston as our right back, and it's almost something that we said in jest earlier in the season that we would find ourselves in this situation. It is almost unbelievable that we have found ourselves in this situation. It's probably the spot in the team, let's put the goalkeeper aside to one moment, it's the spot in the team that really has needed addressed for the longest. We never properly replaced Lustig. We brought Frimpong in, who wasn't really a right back. I know a lot of people think that he's probably more suited to being right wing. We brought him in as well, moved him on, never really replaced him either. John Joe Kenny came in as a loan signing, but that's nothing permanent. That was no long-term solution, and it wasn't really a very good short-term solution either. But we never really addressed that right back spot. Finally, looking like we are doing that. We've had a lot of people rumoured, Bowie and Soppy and Buta, and now it looks like we are finally getting one over the line. So that's positive. He does look good in the sort of highlight section that I've been watching, but anyone can look good in a YouTube video, we know that, so we'll have to judge him on his performances once he gets here. But from what I've seen, what I've read about him, he seems to be the sort of player that I think he'll fit Postecoglou's style. He seems sort of good in the one-on-one situations, which is something Postecoglou's talked about before. He looks like he's got good pace, can use both feet. So, any addition in that right back spot is going to be very welcomed at the moment, but he does look like a good signing, and it is interesting, which is probably a talking point that we'll come on to, is that Desmond is likely to sweep in and take credit for the signings that are going to be coming our way in the next week or so. So we shall look forward to that.
Good timing indeed. But we will definitely be looking at the fact that someone who is often called the absentee landlord is now being very vocal through his selected outlets in the media. Now, Lawrence, you spoke at length, time and time again, on ACSOM around Chris Ayer's best position when he was at Celtic. The fact that he left also meant that we had another option at right back away. Yes, we have to strengthen at centre-half, but as Natasha says there, and we've spoken about the plethora of right-backs we've gone through since Lustig left the building, never been properly replaced. Same could probably be said since Tierney left at left-back as well. Today looks as though we will get in our man, Buta. Now, Natasha said earlier that he looks as though he's going to be suiting Angie's style. I like the fact that he can also play higher up the pitch. Natasha, he can play right mid and right wing as well. Loads of underage caps for Portugal, no full international caps yet. He is 24 years of age. But the question is, Lawrence, do we need a second right back? Because, there's been a huge discussion about the fact that Ralston has been the first pick. He'll be the first pick tomorrow night, undoubtedly. He's been given a year's extension on his contract, so he's going to be here for another year. But surely, when we're going for 4 different competitions this season, that even as a backup, we need further strengthening in that position. Would you agree with that, Lawrence?
Yeah, I think without doubt we need strengthening in it. Listen, it's taking longer, and maybe not for the usual reasons. We had the Howe debacle taken away. We get the manager in. We want the manager to final say in signings. we've obviously got COVID signings are taking longer, and we've got a new CEO in. At last, we're getting one. Frustratingly, he's not going to be available tomorrow night, but I think we definitely need another in. I don't think Tony Ralston's the answer as much as he tries his heart out when he plays. I just don't think he's got it at the level we want for a Celtic right back. So hopefully we've got another in mind. I mean, Ange's press conference says it's not just one we're targeting a position. We're targeting 3 first choices. So if one falls through, we've got another first choice or both. So who knows, maybe we'll get another first choice delivered. You know, he came in and he said, we're short of wingers. We're short up front. Well, we've got some wingers. We've got a Japanese boy coming in up front. We're short at right back. We've got a right back coming in now. We've got a centre half. Another position he identified. He's not identified goalkeeper as a weakness, but we do seem to be ticking off positions he's identified as weaknesses. Not that you need to be any kind of brain surgery to know that's where Celtic were weak in those positions, but we do seem to be kind of going round the positions and getting people for them now.
I just noticed there that there's a guest appearance behind you there, Lawrence. It's Russell Boyce, and I know that he will watch this back just to see his wee appearance there going in for a tin of juice. I hope it's a juice. Hope it's a soft drink. This is the issue, though, Natasha. The reason we're here, and everybody realises this, and at this moment in time, Ange Postecoglou is getting no flack because we left it too late. We're in a situation where he's 40 days in the job when he gets his first competitive game underway. We're a week later, and we're still scrambling about trying to strengthen the squad. And we knew this would happen because of the length of time it took, 106 days to appoint a manager. So, you know, that for me is something that it's put us in a situation that we can virtually write off the Champions League going into games like Midtjylland with a shoestring defensive setup. If we get through tomorrow, I'll be as happy as the next Celtic supporter. But we really have given ourselves a mountain to climb. And it's very, very frustrating. We're going to be talking about not only Desmond, but also Dom Mackay. And when we start scrutinising that, because there's only so long, Natasha, that you can say, yeah, but, you know, he's only been in the job X amount of weeks, months, and then it gets into the point where, listen, it's your job, you're now responsible. Legacy issues, we can't keep blaming the legacy issues. At what point do we get to that stage, do you think?
I don't think we're there yet, but I think we are certainly getting close. It was, of course, like we've touched on, the fact that it took so long to get a manager in place that has left us in the position we are. So, you know, you obviously almost have to reset, you know, so it took those 106 days. There's nothing we can do about that now. We can only deal with the day we have in front of us. And that's almost what Mackay said when he came in. And it's what Postecoglou said as well when they were asked in the press conferences about, you know, look, we're running out of time here. I think they both admitted that. Yes, we know that. We can only deal with the day we've got in front of us and take it from there. We can't turn back time. There's nothing we can do about the length of time it took now. We can only start dealing with us going forward. So I think people were sort of, you know, okay, fair enough. Postecoglou needs time to come in. He needs time to assess the squad. He needs time to identify the key areas that need addressed. And then he needs time to address them. And that's not all going to happen overnight. But we do need to start seeing signs of some things happening. And we are slowly getting there. And these things do take time. You know, we've seen, you know, players come in. Abada's come in and he's looking exciting. He's looking promising. That's good. Kyogo coming in, obviously we've not seen him yet, but he's someone who's going to come and strengthen the attacking line. Again, someone I'm excited about. If Buta's coming in, addressing that right back spot, again, something we need. Starfelt's coming in to address the centre-half spot. So, you know, there is action. They are getting there. Yes, it's slower than we wanted it to be. And yes, we did not want to end up going into these Champions League qualifiers with the defence that we're going to use tomorrow night. But I don't think that blame can be put at the door of Mackay and Postecoglou yet. This happened because of the 106 days it took to appoint a manager, not because of any action that's happened since they came in. Yes, Postecoglou said things are a little slow in getting over the line, and that's something we need to address. But the timing issues and the reason we have the back four out that we will tomorrow night isn't because of particularly anything Postecoglou and Mackay has done. It's been the length of time it's taken to get to this stage.
Yeah, and I would also add to that maybe the 3 or 4 months it took them to actually make the change prior to that as well, Natasha.
Add that.
When we're looking at the signing targets, of which there are many, and there are always players. There's speculation about loads of players at this time of the year regarding Celtic and Celtic being interested in X, Y, and Z. One thing that we've not spoken about yet, Lawrence, is the goalie. Now, we can't ignore this. We can't ignore this situation in relation to the goalkeeper. There seems to be two trains of thought whereby, some of the names that we've seen mentioned, well, they don't fit Angie's style in terms of having the ball at their feet, playing it out from the back. And then the counter argument to that is, but they can save shots. They can keep the ball out the goal, which surely is the priority. You've stood up for Barkas quite a bit, Lawrence. What's your take on him right now as we sit here? Because we know the mistake he made in the first leg. He did not look convincing against West Ham after making a couple of decent saves. I've got to give him credit for that. Where do you stand here? Because we've got three goalkeepers, neither of which I am 100% convinced by.
Yeah, I think Postecoglou's made it clear that he fancies Barkas over the other two. He's what we've got just now. He's not come out and said, I want to change him. As you touched on it, a couple of decent saves and a couple of horrendous errors against West Ham. So I don't know if it's a confidence issue with him. I don't think he's had much around the team, but Celtic haven't said, we've named the positions we are looking at. We've not said goalkeeper.
No.
So you've got to think is that because he doesn't want to undermine his confidence further while he tries to get someone in? He's going, listen, I really need to rely on him. I need to get him as confident as possible. Maybe. I've seen the talk of, Fraser Foster wouldn't suit it. One of the best Celtic goalkeepers I've ever seen. I'm sure he can learn to use his feet. I remember Craig Gordon did. When he came, he wasn't the best with a ball at his feet. And Stevie Woods improved that aspect of his game. So if we're saying we can bring players in but we can't improve them, what's the point of having coaches there? So if a keeper's weak with his foot, well, does he have the ability to improve and learn that part of the game? So I don't think there's much doubt who's the better keeper over Foster or Barkas. I don't think anyone's going to say it's not Foster. It's
the big thing with me, Lawrence, and we've spoken about this a fair bit, Natasha. You see the game evolving when you get to my age and Lawrence's age, and there's things that ball-playing goalkeepers were not a thing a few generations ago. When I started going to Celtic Park, and we spoke about this at the weekend, and I'm not saying this was better, but the ball was played back to the goalie, and after the pass-back rule came in, they just hoofed it up the park, and it was a free-for-all to try and win it, usually about the halfway line, and generally, if you looked at the stats, we probably lost possession more often than not. So I can understand why the more modern coaching systems are looking for the goalkeeper to be confident, either foot, get the ball, and spread a pass. But we're not asking them to play 60-yard passes a la Alan Stubbs all over the park here. You're just asking, play it wide to your two centre-halves who are spreading out left and right. So I get exactly what Lawrence is saying, because if you bring in someone like Fraser Foster, and I'm not saying that is who we should go for, who apparently is not great with the ball at his feet, well, how great do you need to be in the modern day to take a pass and play it 20 yards to your left or your right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I don't think it's, too much to ask to be rolling the ball out to your full-backs. And I think Forster had that ability, enough to fill that role. My concern really is that I just think that Postecoglou might stick with Barkas. Mm-hmm. He's had a good amount of time to assess the squad. I think, if he decided we needed a goalkeeper, he would have went out and addressed that early. That was probably our key problem last year. I mean, we had a lot of problems with the squad last year, but our key problem with the squad, I think, last year is that we didn't have a number one. We chopped and changed between the three. One came in, made a mistake, went out. Another one came in, made a mistake, and went out. It was just never really settled, and that unsettled the whole back line and the team from there. So when Postecoglou comes in, he knows he's got a rebuild on his hands. He knows that there are a lot of areas that he needs to address within the squad, but none more so than a goalkeeper. And he hasn't done that, which makes me think that if he's come in, he's taken the time, maybe collaboratively with Stevie Woods, to look at the goalkeeping situation. And I think he's perhaps decided that Barkas will come good. And if I think he really wanted a new goalkeeper, he would have done that very early, and he might have persuaded someone like Matt Ryan. Yeah. But for me, it looks like he's given Barkas a clean slate, a fresh start, a chance to go and prove himself. He's a Greek international goalkeeper. He played well before he came to us. There must be something in there. So perhaps Postecoglou has said, okay, I think there's something in there. I think we can get a review, fresh start, pressure off, and it hasn't worked, has it? On the back of the Midtjylland game, the West Ham game, surely he's now looking at it as well and thinking, maybe I should make a change here. I don't think he'll put Bain in. I think we saw the problems last season it caused by chopping and changing goalkeepers. But I just wonder if he is now beginning to look at the market. But again, it comes back to the point. It's too late. That decision should have been made very early on, and it hasn't been. And that just gives me the concern that if it wasn't made very, very quickly, it isn't actually going to be made because Postecoglou thinks that Barkas might come good.
It's a good argument. It's a good debate. I mean, Russell Boyce is of the view that, Ange has to adapt, because he is looking at Barkas and saying, well, that's the type of goalkeeper I need. Someone who's confident with the ball, getting passed back to them, spraying the pass out left and right. And he might dig his heels in. I think you were right to suggest that Matt Ryan was probably the opportunity, if there was going to be an opportunity, or maybe we're just looking at that because of obviously the Australian connection. But if we're dealing with Brighton anyway, surely we could have done a deal because there is speculation at the moment that they are the club who are the forerunners to sign Edouard. I think Crystal Palace are already have already been mentioned as well, and it all does lead on to the next topic of conversation. Lawrence, I'll come to you first. It looks as though at some point in the not too distant future, Odsonne Edouard will leave the building. The figures quoted are £20 million plus at this stage. It leaves us with two strikers at the club in Albion Ajeti and Lee Griffiths. Even though, as Natasha said, we do have offensive players who can fit in there. Abada can play centre. And, I don't think that we've only signed Abada for the right-hand side. I mean, James Forrest comes back in fit, and I'm pretty sure we'll utilise him left-hand centre because he can play in both of these positions. But we lose Edwards, and we've got two big questions, really, before we even get to the one of, do we buy another striker, which I think we need to. Ajeti and Griffiths, two completely different questions, it's what to be said. So Ajeti was missing against his former club, Lawrence. Apparently it was just a minor injury. He has travelled to Denmark. Lee Griffiths hasn't. Where do you sit with these two strikers at this moment in time? Ajeti got off to a reasonable start in the pre-season, but a wee bit like his debut season, it's tapered off in the last few games. And then we've got Griffiths, and that's a different conversation entirely. So where are you sitting with these two guys?
We've got a Japanese boy coming in as well. Listen, only one of them should be wearing the hoops out of Ajeti and Griffiths, and I think it's Ajeti. For me, Griffiths' time is up at the club. It should be gone. The atmosphere wasn't good when they come on against West Ham. I don't think it's going to get better in any games, especially when we got to Tynecastle, first game of the season. But I just don't think. I think the club should have taken action. Looks like they made the decision that what he's done is okay, or certainly not a sackable offence. Really disappointed that that's a decision. I thought they should have held higher values than that and should have moved on. And just probably, he's commented on it. He doesn't, it's up to Lee Griffiths to win the Celtic fans round. I don't think Ange wants to waste any time in that. And I think he'll be looking at it. He's wise enough to know he can't have that kind of reaction going on in grounds amongst the fans. It's just going to be disruptive. So you're going to have a Ajeti. You'll have the Japanese boy can play up front. Abada, Forrest can play up front. You're starting to get options, but I think it'd still be looking to add an out-and-out striker. Maybe once a front three that can switch all the time throughout the game, can play all front three positions just for his style.
I mean, I mentioned it within the realms, I'm going to call it the realms of the ACSOM WhatsApp group, Natasha, that we might get away, even if selling Edouard, but by being interchangeable with Abada and Nayogo, who can come into the centre and run with Ajeti. I think when I made that point, Griffiths' situation was slightly different, because I do see the priority being get another centre half in. We need at least one left back, and obviously we'll hopefully get a right back, and we need a goalie. And I want to see all that sorted out before we start talking about bringing in another striker. However, the Ajeti situation, I don't know. I really am veering towards the fact that he's not going to be a prolific goal scorer for Celtic, and we're going to have to cut our losses eventually with him. Although I want to be proven wrong with that. On Griffiths, apparently there's been a muscle strain in the final training session at Lennoxtown. Are the club now looking at this and saying, well, as Lawrence said, he's going to, if that's your own fans and that's the feeling amongst the Celtic support, you go into the atmosphere at Tynecastle or any other ground in Scottish football this season, and they're going to be on Griffiths constantly. Now, that is a sideshow. Are the club making decisions behind the scenes, do you think, in relation to getting him out of the firing line and possibly even, and it would probably be on loan, let's be honest, because it's going to be difficult to get any kind of fee for Griffiths currently. And that's just on the basis of the lack of football he's played in the last 3-4 seasons. Do you think that the club have maybe shifted their kind of focus on Lee Griffiths a bit?
I'm in two minds on that one, because we've seen before that the board don't like reacting to fan pressure. We saw it last season when the fans weren't happy that Lennon was remaining in position, weren't happy with results. The board are not reactive to fan pressure, and they don't want to be seen to be bowing to fan pressure. The board made, or whoever at the club, we don't know, made the decision that Griffiths was going to remain at Celtic and be part of the squad. Somebody made that decision. If they then backtrack on that decision following the reaction at the West Ham game, that would almost be seen to be bowing to the fans, and I'd just be interested to see if they do that when they've been very, very against doing that before. For me, one way or another, he has to leave the club. It is only going to be a distraction this season. We've talked about some of the key things this season being the fans and the club coming back together, that sense of unity coming back, the detachment that everyone's been feeling being removed, and everyone getting behind the team to support the new manager, to support the refreshed team, to support this new Celtic side on the pitch. The absolute last thing we need is the division that we saw in the stands at the West Ham game. I was there. The atmosphere soured when he came on. And that's just not what anybody wants to see. For a lot of people, that was their first time back in the ground in 18 months. And there shouldn't have been that negativity in the stands over one of our own players. He was heavily booed when he came on. The reception then became mixed, with people, cheering him, other people booing him. There was arguments amongst the fans about that. That just should not be happening in the stands of Celtic Park amongst your own supporters. Any player that is causing that division, that unrest, that distraction, that takes away from what we are there for, which is the football being played on the pitch, anyone who does that just needs to go. And I hope that the board or whoever is making the decisions at Celtic are alive to that, are awake to it, and that he is now being moved on. Putting that to one side, if he really does, and I'm sceptical if he really does have another calf injury that's keeping him out of a vital game, then putting everything else to one side, he's not the sort of player that we need at the club in terms of his fitness, in terms of his ability. He looked sluggish when he came on, he's injured again. Everything else to one side, he doesn't seem like he is going to benefit the team this season, and it is time for him to go.
That is the second question, really, isn't it? Even if it is an injury, there's the roll of the eyes. Yet again, Lee Griffiths is unfit for duty, and I think that it's a different problem, but it's a problem that we don't need. Lawrence Connolly. Now, I'm going to come to you because what you have in I still call it terracing, sorry, but in the stands of football stadiums, where it gets to that point where fans are falling out over a scenario that's either unfolding on the park or unfolding with the club. There are disagreements all the time at the football. People disagree with the unfurling of certain banners, etc. But to have that so vociferous at Celtic Park, it's been a long time, I think, since something has divided opinion in such a way. And remember, fisticuffs, actually, with people disagreeing over the boards. I remember in particular, the 4-2 game, when Rangers beat us 4-2, they went into a 3-0 lead after something like half an hour at Celtic Park, and it all kicked off, and people were throwing coins and food and other items at the Celtic board in the main stand, and it all got a bit unsavoury. Obviously, that needs to be taken into account, Lawrence Connolly. And at the same time, the club will be looking at the player who is still employed by that club and thinking, well, what is best for him is putting on that Celtic jersey and going and playing it at Tynecastle best for him as a player? What do you expect us to do, Lawrence Conley?
I hope they reflect on the decision and that are big enough to admit they got it wrong and said, look, with what he's done in his behaviour, he shouldn't be wearing the Celtic jersey. And we've got the decision wrong. Now, whether or not that's best for Lee Griffiths or not, I don't really care. I think they should really just reflect on the decision and say, and if it's taking the fan anger in a division in the stadium to make them reflect, brilliant. I hope they're kind of big enough to not go, well, because the fans are saying this is wrong, but we're not going to change our mind. I just can't believe that they made the decision to keep him. So it's kind of where I'm coming from, that surely now, after the West Ham game, and the change in atmosphere, they went, actually, someone sat down and went, we need to do something.
Something's got to give. You're absolutely right. And I take what Natasha's saying about last season, digging their heels in because they don't want to bow down to the pressure of the fan base, because it's almost as if, well, they control us and they don't want to be seen to be bowing down to the Celtic fans' pressure. Interesting point coming in from IH Decorating. Welcome back to the show. Yet again, another huge game that Griffiths is unavailable for. Lets us down so often it's not true. Happy with Buta, but it wasn't earlier. And Billy Reid reminds us that it's 50 years ago today, Lawrence Conley, that Charles Patrick Tully passed away, a Celtic icon, someone who is something of a cult legend as well as a hero of a certain vintage, and obviously played in the great 1950s side alongside Willie Fernie and Bertie Peacock, Bobby Evans, Neely Mockin, et al., and of course Jock Stein, and Sean Fallon. So a great name in Celtic's history, and our thoughts are with all his friends and family over in Belfast and elsewhere. Now, you made a good point, Natasha, in relation to being at the game, enjoying being back in the stadium. There's been a few people speaking about the way that the ballot is working, that it's unfair, that it's not really working because there's a lot of people unable to go to the games, and it's not as though you can trade your ticket back in. People are afraid to do so anyway in case it affects future ballots, and it means that even though we're getting 18,500 allocation, we're not able to get 18,500 in the stadium. Do you think it's just one of these things that it's difficult for the club to manage, or could it be managed better?
It could be managed better, but I don't disagree that it is very difficult for the club to manage. The bottom line is everybody is absolutely desperate to get back into Celtic Park. We've all been away for far too long. We all miss it and we all want to be back there. That's the bottom line. So everyone's desperate to get back. So a ballot system, which is effectively a lottery, is always going to disappoint a lot of people when we're looking at the numbers that we are. I think the thing that's causing some discontent is that we do have a separate ballot for competitive games and friendly games, which means that some people can come out of both ballots if that's your luck, and some people can come out of neither if that's your luck. And again, it does just come down to luck. I think a lot of people are saying it should be one, so that people should have the chance to go to a friendly game if they've already been to a competitive one. But then you create the disharmony, if someone's drawn out for, a Champions League qualified and someone's drawn out for, a friendly, they're going to wish that they had been able to stay in the ballot for a qualifier. To me, I don't think there's going to be too many people in that position. I think the majority would just be happy to get back to Celtic Park in any capacity for any game. You go along and watch them train, for all they care. But it's difficult, and I do have some sympathy with the club in that sense, that it's never going to please everyone, because that's just the nature of the numbers that we're talking about in the ballot system, which is a lottery. Thankfully, I think we're almost seeing some light at the end of the tunnel in this process. If we're talking about the numbers increasing over the next coming weeks, potentially full capacity by that second week in August. So thankfully, we are coming to the end of this ballot process, hopefully, and we're going to start seeing a full Celtic Park again, which will just be special the first time that happens. It really will. Yeah,
it definitely will. And you can get back to your normal pre-match rituals, Natasha. Sometimes that means a few jars with your mates, Lawrence. And I understand that you and a few of the ACSOM contributors actually had a bit of a social event at the weekend rather than coming to help me out with the West Ham game. How did that go? Did you meet a few people who tune into the broadcast?
Yeah, I met a few of them down Chapman's Bar in Rutherglen. Yeah, but it was great fun. Good Celtic Park bar, not far from the ground. I believe some of the boys then decided to go into the Vogue. But yeah, great night out, all part of the football, isn't it? Getting at Celtic pubs, sharing a few beers with your mates.
Of course, absolutely.
Pre-match chat, much like we do in here. You know, who do we need to sign? Who's in the team?
And a big part of that experience, Lawrence, if you've ever had that opportunity where people, you know, friends, Natasha, come up to Scotland or Glasgow and you've got to give them the Celtic experience, which I've done in the past with people from Germany, for example, when they came over from Hamburg, St. Pauli fans. And you want to give them a kind of taste of what it's like on a match day, and you take them down the Gallowgate and you show them St. Mary's and the Carlton. Now, part of that experience, Lawrence, will be the magnificent monument for Angorta Moor, which was unveiled at the weekend as well.
Yeah, long overdue, I think. An old school friend of mine, Canon White, blessed that he's now that's one of his parishes. But long overdue. I'm surprised, they didn't pick a city centre location for it, but St Mary's is a great location, isn't it?
It's brilliant, aye, and it's at the heart of everything that Celtic represents. Obviously, the birthplace of the club. Now, not always do we have people agreeing with us, Natasha. So when they do, I like to bring up the comments. Magnet67, you're commenting on YouTube. Natasha's right. Griff is just a distraction now, and is the last thing we need. Yeah, absolutely. That is the last thing that we need at the moment. And John brings up the subject of Dermot Desmond. A pity he didn't get involved last October instead of waiting until now. Let's talk a wee bit then about Dermot Desmond. In the past, he has often been described as the absentee landlord. Now he's being described as the driving force behind Celtic's rebuild and the recruitment drive in relation to hopefully wrestling the title back from Rangers. He's obviously been feeding stories, or the club have been feeding stories to selected outlets. Natasha, when I read it, the first thing I'm thinking is, does it, on the one hand, does it undermine those who are involved in the day-to-day running of the club, that he, comes along and, decides, I'm going to get involved? Or is it about time? Like John said, is it about time? Or is it overdue that he actually comes and gets involved here?
I don't particularly want him to be involved in the signing process or the negotiations. I want him to be involved to the extent that I want him to put his hand in his pocket and fund whatever Postecoglou wants to do. But other than that, I don't see any reason for Desmond to be involved in the negotiations and the signings and who we're bringing in. What, are we going to have Desmond in place of a scouting department now? And is that what we're doing? Like, that's not what I want to see happen, and that's not the way a football club should be run. Leave it to the people who we have in place for that. To me, it just seems like we've leaked this story to the Daily Record and to other outlets. That story has been put there for a purpose. And to me, it just, if I'm being cynical, it looks a bit like Desmond has put it out there to come in at the last minute and be seen to be the one getting everything over the line and saving the day again. And yeah, it seems a little bit self-serving for me. I'm sure there's a lot of work been going on in the background from other people in terms of the transfers and the targets that we're bringing in. And as long as Desmond is funding them, and as long as we're getting in who Postecoglou wants to get in, I think that's where Dermot Desmond's input should end on that. I don't think we particularly need him to be negotiating these deals for us.
When we're talking about when he has come in, Lawrence, and often it's in times where we need the backing in a big way, and we've spoken about various managers that he's been involved in the process of bringing into the club. Isn't it a bit late for him to come in at this stage? I mean, we were crying out for that kind of involvement when we were looking for a top-class manager following the departure of Neil Lennon, and even before then, to make the decision on Neil Lennon.
I don't know what you mean a bit late, because he was definitely involved with Eddie Howe debacle, so his fingerprints are all over that. In the past, he's brought his O'Neill, he's brought his Rogers, but he can't deny any responsibility for Eddie Howe. So he's also been involved with bringing Ange in. So I don't think he's been a bit late to the party here. Whoever threw up that less than watertight legal agreement with Eddie Howe that they thought they had a man and was probably feeling a bit of heat from Desmond now, he's probably not liking it. As for him funding us, I think he only ever does that through a share issue, where he buys shares and increases his shareholding. I don't think he's ever going to make a donation to us. I don't know whether or not we should expect him to, but do we want him involved? O'Neill was good. Rogers was good. Jeez, I don't think anyone comes out of the Eddie Howe affair with any credit at all. I like what I've seen with Ange so far. Don Mackay's new to the role. If you can give him some advice or some help and get stuff over the line, where else would Mackay be turning to? Would it be Peter Lawwell then? Where do we want him to be turning to? Desmond or Lawwell? He's the largest shareholder. He's certainly got the control and influence at the club. If he can make decisions happen quicker, which, we're crying out for stuff needs to be happening quicker, that's got to be a good thing. I might be mistaken. He might all of a sudden decide he's going to donate some of his billions to us and, spend 10, 20, 30 million of his own money without getting any shares back for it. But I wouldn't expect that to happen.
I don't think so. I wouldn't expect that. And you're talking about not coming out smelling the roses over the Howe deal. I don't think Eddie Howe has, in any way, shape or form, came out well during that debacle. But we've spoken about Ange Postecoglou. When we look at the age of Ange, as it's been called, and the capitulation against West Ham, Natasha, never nice to see Celtic losing any game, but we were absolutely hammered, pardon the pun, at the weekend. Do you think sometimes it's a wake-up call for the board? This is how far we are off of this. Yes, we're talking about European games tomorrow night. I think we also need to talk about the domestic challenge. We need to talk about some of the teams that seem to be getting their house in order, whereas we are not at the moment, or we're not doing it quickly enough. Is that a wake-up call when you go out and get pasted like that, 6-2 at home?
I hope it's a wake-up call to the board or anyone who thinks that we're in a position that we can compete, because I think the fans were awake to this, and I think we were alive to the position we find ourselves in. So if there's anyone at the club who is not awake to this position, I hope that 6-2 defeat has woken them up to it. From the fans' perspective, from my perspective, I don't think it particularly taught me anything I didn't know. I think we all knew that we were desperately short at the back. Yes, there was good signs going forward. There was a bit of positivity in our play. We looked good in some sort of aspects of our forward play. I thought Abada played well. I thought Christie looked excellent. We can come on to that. So I think there was some good attacking play, which we acknowledge, we've seen. But we know that we are woefully out of our depth at the back, and that's not anything new. It just showed what we already knew. We're looking at a back line of players who shouldn't be starting for Celtic. Nothing against them. It's only based on maybe ability or age. They should not be starting for Celtic, and the fact that we've found ourselves in the position that they are is the concern. We are going to go into a Champions League qualifier relying on two centre-halves who have a combined age of 39, one of them making his first competitive start for Celtic first team. That is not a position we should have found ourselves in. So it can't possibly be a surprise that we're out of our depth at the back, and it needs to be addressed rapidly. It can't be in time for tomorrow night. We know that now. There's nothing that can be done before then. We're going to have to rely on the boys. And to be fair, they looked fine when they came in. I think it's unfair of them. It's a big ask. But the 6-2 defeat to West Ham, for me, like I said, didn't tell me anything I didn't know. We are desperately short of a right back. We're desperately short of a left back and two centre halves. Today, we're starting to see signs that can maybe be addressed. With Buta coming in, that maybe addresses the right back spot. Starfelt apparently obviously won't be available tomorrow night, but apparently he will be available for the weekend. So that's a bit of positivity. Getting there, but there's still a long way to go. That's only two positions. I think we need at least another left back and definitely another centre half. So, we're getting there, but it's come far too soon for tomorrow night.
Absolutely. The thing though, and we see this all the time because we're covering Celtic's every move, both on and off the park, on a daily basis on the ACSOM Bulletin. We cover every game on the match day content. There is a minority of people who don't see the deficiencies of Celtic. They can't see the deficiencies of Celtic, but we constantly highlight them on this show. Sometimes you're called negative for doing so, but we constantly highlight them. So you're right, Natasha, the Celtic fans were alive to all the deficiencies. We never ever want to be proven right, especially when it's an embarrassing defeat. pre-season friendly or not, you don't want to see Celtic shipping 5 or 6 goals against any club. But you know this, I don't have a high enough opinion of many people within that boardroom to suggest that they have had a wake-up call, because I think they're so out of touch and they can still use the same sticky plasters as they have done for a long, long time at the club. And that's my biggest concern. But that leads us on, I guess, to Dominic Mackay, who obviously has had his work cut out. Lawrence, it was great to hear that he was at the service for Charlie Gallagher just last week, speaking to Celtic fans outside the service, etc., which was fantastic, and I wouldn't expect anything less of Dom Mackay. But obviously there's a lot happening behind the scenes, Lawrence. At what point do you think the Celtic fans start, as I said earlier, saying that, yeah, we've got loads of legacy issues, but this is on you now. It's all on you, and it doesn't matter who you go to speak to. This is your job, and we're going to judge you on it.
Listen, when you're hiring that level, we've got to be competent from day one. But for whatever kind of effect they're having, you're really looking at anniversary hire dates, year 1, year 3, year 5. What improvements have they made over that timescale? It's not been the best handover, has it? He's not been left with an all-conquering team, a great squad. There's a lot of issues for him to sort, and it looks like he's addressing some of them. As far as, when will fans start to blame him? Lose 2 games in a row in the league and they'll start to blame him. There's now, whether that is not a realistic thing to blame him for, unless we've lost 2 games and we're going to blame you.
Yeah.
I don't think it's realistic. That level of hire and what he's carrying out, it should be reflected on his anniversary dates, right? What's he achieved in year 1? What's he achieved year 3? And what's he achieved by year 5? If you're going to say, right, you've lost a couple of games as fans, it's the CEO's fault. There's no doubt we need to get people in. You look at the Celtic board, I'm not too sure what function they actually serve, and what they've been doing, because, as you've touched on, it's been apparent for a while where the deficiencies have been. Mm-hmm. Been relying on loan players, having favoured agents. It's been there for all to see, and they must have a database where going, right, who's the centre halves at the club? What age are they? What their experience? There's a lot more data than that on it, but they must have known it's an area we're short in. Same at right back, same at left back.
I just think when you start talking about the board, like you say, Lawrence, there's so many massive strategic issues that, I think that someone like Dom Mackay will come in, Natasha, and probably be a bit startled at how out of touch we are in relation to a lot of these things. Lawrence has touched on there the recruitment aspect, how we've been going about that, how we've been very slow to realise that the system wasn't working like it used to. And recent windows, we've ended up having to offload just about every single player that came in. There's been a couple. I mean, Julien, I think, has been a good signing. Frimpong's been a good signing, but there's been a lot of bad signings in the last 2-3 seasons, and obviously beyond that. But they should have realised, they should have had the business nous to know that this recruitment strategy is not working, and that should have been realised many, many years ago. And it should have came to a head around about the Brendan Rodgers times, because there was a lot of kind of high-profile misses, be that players who came in and players who didn't come in. Big misses in the transfer windows. And then what you said earlier on, we've got a kid in Dane Murray who's making his first competitive start tomorrow night in a European game. And that shows you how inept we are when it comes to our youth regime at Celtic Park, where we don't have enough players who are first team ready. And you're throwing in Stephen Welsh. Thank goodness he had the strength of character to get through last season, by the way, Welsh, because that could have ended his Celtic career. Throwing him in against Celtic, against Rangers rather, where the team is so fragmented, and all the way through the season, he's really up against it, playing with 3 different goalies behind him and a whole host of other centre halves of all shapes and sizes. So these are massive, massive issues behind the scenes, and as Lawrence says, we don't seem to have that strategy in place. It's almost as if we're starting from scratch with a lot of these threads of the business.
Well, it doesn't seem to be any change, really. When Mackay came in, and I'll go back to the press conference which we attended, and we were very encouraged by what Mackay had to say. We asked him about the change of structure, a director of football coming in. We referred to the fact that he had promised a modernisation of the whole of the football operations. And what he said in response to that was that they were looking at the structures implemented by other top teams across Europe, and he wanted to be world leading in this, and he wanted to make sure he had the right football operation structure in place. And then from there, once the structure was set, and that Postecoglou was helping him with this, from there, once the structure was set, he would then look at filling the roles. On the surface, none of that has happened. We haven't changed anything. There has been no modernisation in the slightest. There has been no change of structure at all. All we have done is replace Lennon with Postecoglou and replace Lawwell with Mackay. Absolutely nothing else has happened. Postecoglou hasn't even brought in new people with him. The structure hasn't changed. The personnel hasn't changed apart from him. So what are we seeing? Where is the modernisation? Where is the development? Where is this fresh-looking Celtic's football operations? We're not seeing any of it. And Mackay's been in the position, or he's been on the scene for a while now, and absolutely nothing has happened.
Mm-hmm. You know, there is a comment coming in saying that a wake-up call, that should have happened. They've been sleeping at the wheel since Christmas. I would actually go further than that, Kelly, and say that they've been sleeping at the wheel for a long, long time. I think there was a huge amount of complacency that crept into that boardroom, and Celtic as a club became very, very complacent. And a lot of the downfall that we're now seeing is as a result of that. It's starting to unfurl in front of our eyes, the fact that there are deficiencies that we got away with in the past. Natasha, there was a problem, chuck £2.5 million at it. There was a problem position, just buy another player. Or, once the transfer window opens and they're just throwing bad money after bad money. And that happened for a long, long time. And now it's becoming pretty clear that all of these strategic areas of the business are lacking massively. And as Lauren says, you've just got to look at when the flags were being unfurled outside Celtic Park. A lot of people were saying, who's that? Because they play such a small part at the club. There is no impact in what a lot of them are doing at the football club. Now, there's a few comments coming through in relation to Ryan Christie, actually. Brown Warrior reckons that he's playing for himself as he's in the shop window. Lanky reckons that he plays hot and cold. I think he's always kind of been hot and cold since he came to Celtic. He's a key player for us tomorrow night, though. Yes. I mean, have you been impressed, Natasha, since Postecoglou came in?
Yeah, I have. I thought Christie has been absolutely excellent against Midtjylland. I thought he was excellent again when he was on the pitch against West Ham. And to be fair, I think he's probably been our best player in both of those games. I think when I'm talking about the good attacking play that we were seeing in the West Ham game, if we're going to take any positives from it, then there was some good attacking play. Again, against Midtjylland, I thought we looked good going forward. The concern is that a lot of that came through Ryan Christie. Some of his touchy, some of his technique. He is on form right now. And yes, absolutely, that may be to be putting himself in the shop window and playing for a move. It absolutely might be, but it shows the quality that he has. And that quality will be a loss next season if he could have kept that up for the season. We didn't see enough of it last season, but we didn't see enough of it from anyone. Let's be honest, the whole team was cold. It's hard to, have players on top of their best form when the whole team were playing like they were. But certainly under Postecoglou, I think Christie has looked excellent. He is the driving force. He linked up well with Edouard. He looked like he'd link up well, across that middle role. The shame is that I think he is playing that well and he's looking that good because he is trying to engineer a move away from the club. There's not too much chat about a club being interested in him. There was recently. Have we heard anything about anyone coming in from him? Not too much. So that might be on his mind. He might be trying to get his stock a little bit higher, playing, in Europe, playing against, an English team, start reminding people that he's there, start playing like to his full potential, to engineer a move away. I'd like to keep him, I would, but I wouldn't like to keep him if he doesn't want to be here. And if he doesn't want to be here, like Postecoglou has said many times, it's not his position to keep people happy. He doesn't want players that don't want to play for Celtic. And if that's the case with Ryan, then yes, he's looked excellent, but it is time for him to move on.
Yeah, I just look at the offensive areas and I see the number 10 being Turnbull and Rogic, although Christie can play there. I look at the left-hand side, we've got Mikey Johnston and Furuhashi. We don't know how quickly he's going to adapt to the rigours of Scottish football. I don't think Johnston has adapted to the rigours of Scottish football And on the right, we've got Forrest, Abada, and obviously we've got young Dembele, who's injured at the moment. So for me, that's still a bit thin. And I just think a player like Christie, who can actually play in all three of those positions, we can argue where he's most effective, but he can play right, left, or as a number 10. In terms of the squad, if you could get that level of performance, if Postecoglou could get that level of performance out of him, then he's a very, very good player for Celtic. But I take your point, and I think that, yeah, he's in the shop window, isn't he? But, whilst he's here, if that's what gets the performances out of him, I'll be pretty happy. Another thing that's coming in, Maravchik25 comes in on YouTube, and if you are watching, remember to subscribe, and you will be in the monthly prize draw giveaway. Massive big prizes coming your way. Maravchik25, get Lovric completed by the end of the week and send Johnson out to Motherwell, Hibs, etc. for a year to see if it can have the Christie effect or not. Now, I'm going to take 2 points from this. Not so much Motherwell, but Hibs. If that said Hibs and Aberdeen, I would be reluctant to loan anybody to Hibs or Aberdeen right now. Because, yeah, we're focusing on the European game tomorrow night, but I actually think both of those clubs are looking in pretty good shape at this moment in time. And Celtic aren't, particularly at the back. Do you have any concerns, Lawrence, that not only we're a wee bit short from challenging for the league, but another couple of the clubs are getting their acts in order, they're getting their house in order, and we're going to actually be up against it this season domestically. What's your thoughts on that?
Look, listen, I think there's a number of warning signs that will say we'll be up against it, especially, when Jared came on from Australia and said, look, Ange's first teams, the first year's not often that good. It's kind of second, third year that's really good. Mm-hmm. Don't worry, it'll be good in attack, but it's not so good at the back. You're like, right, it's not things that fill you with confidence, especially when we are so weak at the back. Putting Johnson out on loan, yeah, we don't have enough players in the squad. So if we put him out on loan, who's going to cover? Would someone take him on loan with his injury record? I know they're going to be paying a wage for that injury record. I'm not too sure they would. But yeah, Aberdeen's looking good. Hibs are looking good. We need to get more signings in. It appears that when round we're closing more off, but we could have done with double the amount. It looks like Eddie's on his way out. Whether that's playing a mind at the Celtic board, they're known to be prudent on their spending. Whether they're saying, look, get him off the wage bill and get that money in before we sanction another round of players coming in.
Well, we suggested that the other week, didn't we? We were waiting on Ayer leaving the building before we bring in Starfelt, and the timing of that would suggest that we were probably somewhere near the truth with that prediction. What's your take on it, Natasha? Are you concerned that some of the other domestic teams who, in terms of Hibs had a great season last season. It was the best campaign in the league for several years, almost 1.5 decades since they finished third in the league. It looked as though they were up for a cup, but the Hibs did. They've retained their manager, who's now signed a new contract. At the moment, they've kept all their top assets, although they were expecting maybe to lose one or two of them. So I'm looking at them thinking, well, they're no worse than last season. I think we are. I think Celtic are at the moment, because of the amount of players that have left, and we've not yet seen the replacements. There's no guarantee. It's great to get Starfelt in, of course it is, and I'm looking forward to seeing him playing. Abada's looked good, but sometimes you think, well, he's 19. Is the consistency going to be there? I'm not being, pessimistic here. But then I look at Aberdeen, and I'm not just basing it on the one European result. Fantastic result as it was. Ferguson firing on all cylinders. They're bringing in players pretty regularly at the moment. They're building something. Brown's there to marshal them. Stephen Glass has obviously got that good relationship with Bruni. Am I concerned? Well, not yet. I'm not yet, because as you say, I am expecting a few players to be coming in the next week or so. But do you feel that the gap is getting closer in that respect?
We'll find out as the season progresses, but it does look like teams are strengthening round about us, in particular, like you've touched on, Aberdeen. I think they're making some great signings. I think Jet, coming from Livingston to go up there, is going to be absolutely fantastic for them. I think he's going to be a player who really suits the style of football that Aberdeen have tended to play, although it might change under Stephen Glass, but I think he'll suit that fantastically. He seems to be settling in well and enjoying it there. Same with Scott Brown, bringing something to the side, leading them. I think he'll be a great asset. So I think that's a strong-looking Aberdeen team, equally with Hibs. I was actually reading earlier today that they're perhaps interested in Jozo Simonovic coming back to Scotland to play with them, which would be an interesting signing if they were able to do that, if his fitness issues have maybe, you know, healed, fixed to one side. You know, he could be a great addition to them if they were able to do that. And both clubs, like you said, got brilliant results in Europe. So there is certainly signs that the teams round about us are strengthening. We'll see how that goes as the season starts to pan out. But you do have to be concerned that if your opponents are all strengthening and you're not, then that has to be a concern.
Yes, there's a few comments coming in saying that why get worried, why get carried away with Aberdeen and Hibs, they won against average Euro opponents. Yeah, you know, you might say that, but it's not just the performances in Europe. I just think personnel-wise, you look at Hibs, they did expect to lose one or two, they might still lose one or two, but you know, I don't think they're any weaker. And Aberdeen, I think, are looking stronger in terms of the personnel. Like you say, they're bringing in players that know the domestic game. They're bringing in other players who are unknown quantities. I think it's a good mix. And of course, they've got Bruni there at the helm as well, pulling the strings. So, you know, I could well be wrong. I just think Celtic need to get or act together in that respect. Good point, because there's always talk about Nisbet at Hibs. And Who's News found out about him from a teenage blogger who scouted the Championship. He'd have cost $850k a year ago. I remember when he signed for Dunfermline, actually, he was very prolific with Wraith Rovers. And there was a time where, you know, there was clubs in for him and they were talking, I think Dundee United were interested, as well as Hibs. They were talking at fees around the £500,000 mark. You know, you look at him now and I don't think Hibs would let him go probably for any less than £3.5 to £4 million, do you reckon? So, yes, it's all about getting in at that stage and having the ability thereafter to actually develop him that wee bit further, because we're bringing him in as a raw player at that stage. He then developed quite a bit last season with Hibs. So, yes, these players are out there if you look hard enough. Now, we have a European game tomorrow night, which obviously everything we've spoken about funnels into tomorrow night. 1-1. Now, had it been last season or any other season, Lawrence, I'd have been looking at this going, well, you know, they've got their away goal. I wouldn't have been that confident. We're going to have to win the game outright to get through the tie. What's your feeling tomorrow night? How do you think? Do you think Ange will stick to his shape, his game plan, and as well as Murray, is there any other changes you'd make to that starting 11?
Listen, I thought we looked really good up until Beaton gone off. You know, we created a lot of chances. I felt we should have 10 more of them. Eddie should have scored. I suppose it's up front. You're looking and going, what kind of performance we're going to get out of Eddie? It's all right, keep saying, he's got the talent, best striker at the club. But it doesn't really appear to be putting in the effort and hasn't for some time. And the one-on-one with the keeper with the Jetty, I scored it maybe. But I think Eddie's just such a big risk for us, whether he's going to be bothered or not. And if he isn't, it's the focal point of your attack.
Which Eddie's going to turn up?
Yep. So I think Ange maybe be looking in, if he's lost patience with Eddie and saying, well, he doesn't want to be here, it's obvious. And how far along the negotiations are, if they are, you know, but selling Eddie, might go, well, we don't want to risk that. Let's just get Albion in, he's going to give us 100%. You know,
aren't these the games, Lawrence, that are made for Eddie? You know, because
we missed the 1-1.
Remember the discussion that Neil Lennon had around Samaras? And he says, listen, he just didn't fancy it, you know, travelling up to Inverness, didn't fancy that, but put him on the park against Rangers or Barcelona, he was all over it. He was one of that type of player that was motivated by the big occasion.
There's a big occasion, the first leg. Didn't appear motivated by that. I don't know. So
who would you play? Who would you play up front?
I would change it. I'd put Albion in. I just don't think Eddie's given us anything. I thought the 1-on-1 he looked half-hearted at. You know, mate, you've got to score that. You know, he scores that, and tomorrow night would be a lot more comfortable for us. I just don't think he's given us enough in the park and has it for some time. He's certainly not. It doesn't appear to be giving us 100% effort. Doubtful he's even giving us 60 or 70% effort.
So line-up-wise, Dane Murray at centre-half, Ajeti up front, and how do you think the game will go, Lawrence?
I expect us to create lots of chances. A bit ropey at the back, but I'm thinking maybe 2-1.
2-1 Celtic?
Yep.
Natasha, do you agree with any of that? I mean, obviously, there's the one forced change at the back. We've spoken about young Murray coming in, making his first competitive start. What would you do up front? Do you agree with Lawrence?
No, I'm going to go. I would stick with Edward. I agree with what he's saying. To be fair, I agree with the fact that Edward is giving us 60% effort max, that his head is out the door, that he is a shadow of the player he can be and that we know him to be. But through lack of another option, I don't think Ajeti's a realistic option to put into a game of this magnitude. So through lack of another option, I'm going to start Edward. Ajeti, he wasn't even featured against West Ham. Apparently, some sort of minor injury. How fit is he? I don't know if they'll take any risks there. Edward is still the best striker at the club. Yes, he's a big game player. He didn't turn up for a big game last week. I hope he turns up for this game, and he is the striker that I would put in just over Ajeti, to be honest. And then, with that, there is no one else. So for me, obviously the forced change with Murray coming in, and otherwise, I don't see him making many changes. I think, like Lauren says, it'll be a tight game. I do think we are better attacking, so I think we'll see some attacking play from Celtic. I don't think we can rely too heavily on our defence shoring things up. So I do think we'll be looking to attack and create chances. And it's about taking them. And it's about making sure that we do take them. And we didn't do that in the first leg enough because that team was there for the taking. And that's the frustrating thing. I don't think that Midtjylland are as good as I thought that they would be. And they're showing at Celtic Park. Perhaps they will be better at home. But I think we've got a chance. But I think we'll need to score goals because I think we'll lose goals.
Do we bring back Jamesy Forrest? Is he going to be ready?
If he's ready, then I'm still not sure. I'm not sure he showed me enough, I'm not sure he showed Postecoglou enough against West Ham to fight his way back into that team. I think I like the look of Abada. I think he's exciting. I think he looks good. I'd like to see more of him. And I think that second half was a chance for players like Rodgick and Forrest to show that they are still first 11 team players. And I'm not sure that either of them particularly took that chance. I know it was a big ask and I know that it was a difficult situation in that second half and that they were playing in a sort of second string team, if you like. But I'm not sure either of them showed enough to justify a first 11 spot tomorrow night.
Well, I'm just, for the sake of the debate, going to go different from the pair of yous, and I'm going to play Forrest at the right with Abada through the centre. And I reckon Celtic will win 1-0. Clean sheet. Bizarre prediction, but we shall see. We'll be back tomorrow at 12:30 on the ACSOM Bulletin, and of course, we will follow all the action tomorrow night. The boys, Boise and Kevin Graham, will be back tonight on Screaming Celica. They will be going out at 7 o'clock because we have the state of Scottish football going out every night at 6 o'clock. Great team of contributors, a young, talented team who are contributing to that show. So thanks, everybody, for getting involved. On YouTube, Facebook and Twitter, make sure to subscribe on YouTube. And thank you to Lawrence Connolly and Natasha Miko for joining me once again on A Celtic State of Mind.